as a white woman, you're like, ooh, colonialism, bad.
Yeah, I was interested the most in unlearning the mental models I've developed about sustainability, learning about indigenous knowledge without appropriation, and relearning environmental activism. Because I graduated with a degree in environmental planning and management. And at least from what I remember, back in college, we were not really taught how to think critically for ourselves, sadly. Instead, we were taught lessons with value judgments, like people versus the environment. And I remember this particular class where we were taught that coastal communities selling seashells by the seashore were bad instead of teaching us to ask questions like what made them sell these necklaces. uh and so I only began to grasp the concept of like people and planet when I became an ESG analyst, because I was responsible for researching controversies involving publicly listed companies, particularly in the utilities, telco, uh, tech industry. And we gave them ratings to determine whether they would stay in the ESG indices. This experience helped me understand how environmental, social, and governance issues are intertwined. And it also raised my awareness on global issues and how corporations often work with governments to extract. But at the end of the day, I felt like I wasn't making a direct impact because we had all of these information, but we couldn't really give direct recommendations to institutional investors. So I decided to teach. And what I learned from my experience as an ESG analyst, I tried to integrate into the programs I designed and facilitated for kids. At that time, it was, teaching them how to analyze problems, to see the social and environmental impacts, um, solve these problems using design thinking and biomimicry. And um, from my college years up until the last lesson I delivered in 2023, I genuinely believed I was really practicing environmental activism in the different roles that I took on. Until one day I attended this training on CEDAW, and one participant asked how we can keep companies accountable to human rights violations. And I naively suggested that we use the framework of ESG, to which someone else responded that it was a form of corporate capture. And it was the first time I heard of the concept of corporate capture. It was then that I realized that I needed I there was a lot of things I didn't know and I needed to learn more. And then I started seeing resources about how the frameworks I used a lot in my teaching, like SDGs and tools like design thinking, were rooted in a colonial narrative. I accepted what I read, but I didn't really understand why exactly they were colonial. So I sought the course. I don't remember if I just typed decolonial sustainability, but I saw it. And to help me challenge my assumptions about sustainability and explore the unknown in decolonial sustainability. And I remember seeing the pilot version of the course, but at the time I wasn't ready. So I bookmarked the course, and then in 2024, I, I applied. I don't think I really sat down and thought about, oh, I'm ready. I just felt it, and maybe because I also just resigned from my from my job as a teacher, and I had time.
When I was in school, I studied or I created my own major of sustainable business development. So my inspiration when I was younger was, yeah, how do we make business more sustainable? And then that led me on this path to sort of regenerative economics and economic systems change. And then it's always been an interest. That was how I was introduced to Sam. I've always followed Sam on LinkedIn and just kind of peeking at things. So I saw the course. It was definitely a of the moment kind of thing as well. I had been working at a startup. They ran out of money. I was not working. Then living in Nairobi, I think you're pressed most days with elements of colonialism and just power, white supremacy, all these, being a white woman living in the city, um, and wrestled with them, but not necessarily facilitated. And I think my inspiration for the course was to look at things more directly. I remember when I first moved to Nairobi, I think I spoke to Sam one on one on a call and just asking me kind of pressing questions that I wasn't sure how to answer. And when I was looking in between roles, it's like, what am I looking for? What can I learn so that I'm not getting involved in this space that I sort of saw these issues and incongruences in? How do you know that the world needs a massive system change? You also need an income, uh, and you also don't want to be perpetuating the same thing that got us here in the first place. So, what kind of options do you have? How do you reconcile those things? I luckily, like so gratefully, had a friend that sponsored my course. We had met via this kind of online regenerative whatever space. And if he hadn't sponsored me, I think it would have been a harder decision. And now on the back end, it was like a completely life changing course that was totally worth all that it cost. That's also a nice kind of reminder. And I don't also, as an adult, do a lot of adult learning. I don't sign up for courses very often, maybe an art class. And so, yeah, the whole experience was quite affirming in both that I was an adult choosing to do an adult learning course, and it was, I don't know, ish familiar. Like the space was ish familiar to me.
When people ask me about my experience with Texas, I often struggle to express it in words that encapsulate everything simply because it's not possible. Like, I feel like it's something that you have to experience for yourself to see the profound ways that the course can transform you. But I will try. At the start, I was really excited to learn about decolonial frameworks and tools that I can use at work, not even on a personal level. So I guess you can say maybe I was coming into the course maybe with that extractive mindset, right? But right off the bat during the first live session, I already had a personal epiphany. I realized that, I'm a product of past and ongoing ethnocide, and growing up in an urban center like Metro Manila, I unknowingly based my sense of self on systems created by colonialism. So I realized that I've been disconnected from my parents' roots because of their urbanization, moving from the province to Metro Manila, and assimilation, hoping to give us a better life. And the moment that I was able to articulate this to my crewmates and even to some close friends outside of the course, for some reason, I cried. Like I was grieving or something, and I couldn't quite explain it. It's as if it was waiting to be found deep inside my body. And I guess this is what I meant earlier about how no words can truly explain the experience because of how embodied the thinking and feelings I went through without even the need to do, somatic exercises or even meeting people in person, which I find really powerful. And there were many more experiences like that, crying during a live session, turning off your camera. Even though I know Possible Futures is very explicit about the fact that the course is not a form of therapy, there were definitely moments where it felt that way. I was also very confused at the beginning. I couldn't grasp some of the concepts because I struggle thinking in abstract ways. Maybe also because I'm taught that way, that I'm able to understand more if there are concrete examples. And there were times where I felt like I was grasping at straws, thinking, just tell me the answer. Like, what do you mean? What are you trying to say? But I trusted the process, and towards the end, I finally understood why the course was designed and delivered the way it was, because Possible Futures wanted us to exercise our agency and think for ourselves, not prescribe the right way or the one way. And that is something that is uncomfortable at the beginning, especially if you're used to, in an education system where they tell you the answers right away. And me, as an educator who designs and facilitates learning experiences, like I really find it powerful how the course could transform you or could transform people without using the usual principles of learning. It was mind blowing how it flipped the dominant narrative of how learning should be fun or gamified or comfortable. That's how I look back on that experience. I feel shy saying this, but I think one of the reasons that made me committed was because I was offered a full scholarship. So I didn't want, oh, we wasted one spot on a person who didn't commit to this. So I was practicing responsibility. But when did it click? Maybe because I'm also the type of person who takes a while to understand these things, but I try my best to ask around from my crewmates and even sending emails to the navigators. Yeah, there was no one specific moment. I feel like there were several moments where I was like, oh, so that's what they meant in a past live session or in a past module. I think also because there were key messages or themes that you repeated throughout the journey. That's why like it was mentioned the first time here and then they mention it here again and then they mention it here again and then that's when it starts clicking. I i don't think I was confused the entire time from the first live session to right because like session one I understood. I was able to take away that personal epiphany. I think there were just specific parts that confused me, so not everything. So for example, the for me was challenging to grasp.
It was colonial hegemony for me. I'm like, what is that? What are we talking about? What is that term? And I just remember it was such an integral part of the course. But when I first learned it, I was like, what are you guys talking about? So when I look back on the course, which I do because I tell people about it. A friend of mine recently who's involved in the art space in Nairobi, I was telling her about it, and I think for me it was like a beautiful course, from the metaphor to the miro to the original artwork to the way that you're asking the people to learn, right? Like zoom in on that, and then in the you're going to find like this little click button that's going to click you here. And as a experience, as a remote experience, beautiful. Get us out of Google Docs, get us out of Excel, get us out of PowerPoint, get us out of this like crap that we're sitting in that defines our entire world, and give an experience that's we can do it differently, and you did it differently. So it's like, as the narrative is that we can build a different world, you're also actually building a different world. Here's a different way to educate people. Here's a different way to learn that art is so intricately integrated into the learning. Why do we not have that in any other space or place in our life? And art is, the basis of so much. Yeah, just as an experience, as a learning experience. Beautiful, excellent in the how you all designed and executed. The other thing that was sort of interesting is the rules. I was like, okay, I'm on a ride here, and I got to follow these rules, and I'm attentive to the rules. Maybe I don't get the rules, but I'm curious about the rules. Why don't we have a WhatsApp group? Okay, that's interesting. And then through the course you're like, oh, yeah, I can totally see why we don't have a WhatsApp group, because whose voices are going to be on that WhatsApp group and how it will quickly devolve into the very similar whatever that we're all a part of all the time that we're trying to move away from. And so if I were to give advice to anyone on the cohort that's coming in, it's like, just buckle your seatbelts and just pay attention, be aware, but don't try and fight it. Like, just be in it, like submit, like you're in the course, submit, put your hands up, like, and don't allow like the noise of your own bias or your own whatever, how you think it should be, to come in to try and rejig the experience. If you signed up for the experience, be in the experience and take it for everything that is coming your way. I think another piece of the content that I wasn't expecting that I appreciate so much is the combination of the personal reflecting with the present political reflecting and the historical. How do you weave? You're weaving all these different things together. So yes, these things happened. And, as a white woman, you're like, ooh, colonialism, bad. And then you pull me to where I am today, and it's like, you are the problem. Yeah. Like, these different behaviors that you exhibit are actually the problem. So yeah, you can shame on whoever for perpetuating this world and building this system that we're a part of. And also, you're not free of it just because you weren't there to build it. You're building it, right? So it forces such an accountability on the cohort, while also being mindful of what could potentially come out of that accountability, which is like, I know everything now. I'm enlightened. Yeah. And I'm like the best white woman because I'm so enlightened. It's like, you don't allow for that energy to come into the space, and it's not self-congratulating. The feeling was a constant, like you're just constantly ticking. Your brain's constantly ticking. Rarely do I like commit to things that I feel really committed to. Like, oh, I'm looking forward. And I was actually looking forward to Sundays for the class. I found myself eager to participate or just to learn. What are they going to show us next? And also, part of that was the rules also, like, oh, this is interesting. Like, boundaries. Like, you set boundaries for the participants in the course. And there's something in that makes you wonder why. And then you're kind of, cool. I want to I want to learn more. I want to be in this. Like, I like how I feel. I like that I feel like accountable. Particular for my crew, we had someone that was asked to leave. And that was such a huge learning for me because I was CC'd on these exchanges and was sort of, okay. And what I mean when I say you buckle up and you stop trying to, don't try to shape it as you would want it to be shaped. Let it shape in and around you. And my synthesis or my understanding from that experience, because it felt at the time harsh, was a huge learning. And I respected it so much after it happened. I think that experience sparked a lot of conversation and it really helped to validate some of the boundaries that were being set because it grounded, oh, this is the problematic behavior that this course is speaking to. This is, and it's subtle. And also we're conditioned, but it certainly brought up maybe conversations that we would have had later on earlier. For me, very much validated what I'm saying of just go with the flow of what you've signed up for. Like just chill and be keen. Like and that's what this whole course is teaching. It's like this little thing actually seeds itself and then it kind of like spreads and trickles and that is the point of a lot of the learning as well, that these behaviors and actions and systems can be just these little micro movements, but it matters. And they build on each other and it matters. And it's actually disrespectful. And yeah, so that was an unintended, I think, learning, but it grounded the experience.
Even at the start of Dexas, there were already effects on my personal life. Like I used to think there was an end to decolonizing yourself, like a goal I could reach or an image of myself that I could see. But of course, after the masks and the like I realized that it's a never ending journey because colonial hegemony will always pull us back when it benefits and comforts us. And one powerful impact, personal impact on me is cheesy with my relationship to living. Because before Dexas, I experienced a lot of, I don't mind sharing this to be clear. I experienced a lot of suicidal ideation because of a past trauma. And for some twisted reason, deep down, I always worried I was gonna end up like my perpetrator just being a bad person in general. But because of this particularly, was realizing that I will always have internalized coloniality in the same way that I will always be susceptible to being a bad person, quote unquote. But it's my responsibility to keep interrogating my internalized coloniality or what these traits are that could lead to being a bad person. I remember it so well because in that breakout room with my crew, where one of the coaches were also like, I cried and then we went back to the plenary. So, yeah, that's one of the powerful things. But also because of Dexas, I've been working hard on stepping into my agency more by trying to cultivate my creativity, self-confidence, also being more intentional about normalizing inconvenience as a rebellion against like the right to comfort. When I think about my past self, I feel like I just wanted an easy way out and was making excuses for myself to not do the the hard inner work after the course, I see myself more confident in terms of being more responsible about my actions.
The way that the course has changed me is like a complete perspective shift. Like as I was mentioning, my brain is it's constantly clocking things. I'm like aware, like opened a new level of awareness and scrutiny. I used to read the paper, in school, or like pay attention to the news super much, or love and respect like B Corporation, and be a driver for change. And I think in so many ways, it's just made me be like, LOL, like we are all being fooled. And now there's a confidence of the people on this call in the community around decolonizing sustainability and even if we are the minority or there is a minority there's a confidence that there are other people that see it and that believe it. And so call it and don't shy. I think that's probably the biggest struggle that I have, is actually calling things like as you see them. It's the practice it's difficult, but that patience, as I know, because of my perspective shift, I will find where I'm supposed to fit in, what's my role in this in a larger sense. Yeah. Like how can I take ownership or accountability to build and create something that is underpinned by principles, lessons, values, realities that I uncovered or saw an awareness of through the course and have continued to explore since. I like Jen, how you said like this right to comfort. It's such like that's the thing. Yeah, I'm wrestling, I think, all the time. So I would say like the impact is that I'm constantly wrestling. I don't have a nice bow. I don't have a nice tale of all these amazing things that I've done on the back end of it. I will say I wrote an article just last week that has a lot of this energy from the course in it 2 years later. Okay, I have something to say actually about the startup space and the colonial behaviors and practices that sit in this space and the funding and like, yeah, there's a lot there. So slowly.
Has the course changed how you see your positionality as a white woman in your city?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And like has fractured my engagement with white people, foreigners in the city. Like the tolerance to engage in conversations of like, and I'll speak freely, but like white women like, oh, I don't have that many Kenyan friends because I don't know, like Kenyans like to drink. And or Kenyans like did it XYZ. Yeah, just fill in the blank. I do not want to spend my time like affirming those comments and things. And this is when I'm saying like I struggle. Like even recently, a really close friend of mine's house. Yeah, just some side comments here and there that are just wholly problematic. And yeah, you just slowly you take distance. So the community, like the biggest, like a community that I maybe was sitting in 2023 looks very different from a community that I'm sitting in 2025. I'm not absolved of being a white woman in this city for sure, and I still sit on a lot of privilege, and it's not resolved. And I think as I'm discovering like what's next and where I go and these things, like it's not going to be in Nairobi because I ultimately am not. It's not my place. It's not my space.
You
That
don't,
doesn't mean I'm.
yeah, you don't belong there. I had
Yeah, I don't belong here.
exactly the same feeling when I was living in Europe. I don't belong here. I'm not gonna be here.
I don't belong here.
Why am I
Yeah,
planning? Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
add on or build on what Isabel said about positionality and accountability. I think I also wasn't able to share that until you brought it up. That is one of the impact of Texas on my personal life is like being more keenly aware of your positionality. Like I know of the concept of positionality. I know that I hold certain identities that intersect, or I know that systems of oppression intersect. I know these things, but Dexus made me aware of how, or made me realize that I was holding on to identities that oppressed me because I know I'm from the global south or because I identify as queer, when in reality, I hold a lot of privilege, power, and access. I tend to be in a position of oppression when I am surrounded by foreigners. Like I make myself smaller. And that changes when I'm with my fellow Filipinos. Just being keenly aware of how highly contextual that positionality is made me more responsible and accountable. Whereas in the past, before the course, sometimes I would default to I'm this identity, so I feel uncomfortable doing that. Or like I would
You would
I would
limit
fix
yourself to certain identities that you were kind of taught to conform to.
yes. And sometimes make my own excuses for not doing certain things because yeah, I'm oppressed by this identity.
It was a life-changing course, and it feels very important that it's inspiring to imagine that if you can get a cohort of people to have a shift in their perspective and more of a number of people that are kind of moving in that same direction, that actually gives hope amidst equally kind of holding a bit of a nihilist perspective on the system. It gave hope while also giving me a bit of like, this is insurmountably difficult. This will be an insurmountable ship to sink. Knowing that there are other people that are keen and curious and open to imagining a different reality is hopeful. And I think I'm missing in my life more of that. It could be said community. It could just be assurance or affirmation of like, keep pushing on this, keep trying. Like we're here. Like we're not in like a disciples way, but just like reminders. And I seek my own, obviously, and that's again accountability. Like you have to. You're not here to babysit me, and I understand that. Yeah, but there's a lot, and it's yeah a great decision, and I would fully recommend.
I think after the expedition, I've been learning more how to move between colonial spaces and decolonial spaces. I find the metaphors very powerful because even after the expedition, sometimes I would experience something in real life and it would automatically remind me of a metaphor even if I wasn't really intentionally thinking about it. And I'd be like, oh, so that's what the metaphor meant by X and Y. And I remember in one conversation, I asked Sam, like, why Possible Futures used a lot of metaphors. And she said, if I can share it, that you personally think it's how our ancestors talk to us. And now I feel like I also believe in that because why else were these metaphors haunting me? So the metaphors really stick and remind you of what you learned in the expedition. Uh, but I think metaphors aside, I feel like I'm also in a position where in a privileged position where I get to engage a lot with possible features in different engagements, like shortly for the health and decolonization project, and then with the incubator crew on to build on the entity assessments exercise from the course, and an audio series. So I feel lucky that I get to continue to learn, to discern, to interrogate, to strategize for how we can be more effective and authentic in upholding real decolonization.